recording today?
We are now, thanks.
Okay, there we go. So just that note that we're trying to record when we aren't doing breakout rooms so that others that want to see these after the fact, or if you want to go back and watch part of it again, you certainly can, but just note that our recording is on. And the chat box is there for you if you'd like to, ask a question, share a resource, make a comment. Please feel free to do that into the chat box. And I don't think there were any supplies that we specifically needed today, but you might want to jot some notes. You might want a pen and something to write on if you feel like taking notes. There will be a handout available to you after this. Jennifer will send it when she sends the reflection form that has your CEU connection, and it'll also be on the A+ Live binder under A+ Talks after the fact. We do encourage you to turn your video on so we can see who's with us. We also understand that sometimes you're not able to or don't want to do that. Maybe it was a bad hair day. Maybe you've got your kids in the picture with you. Maybe you're cooking dinner while you're watching, whatever it is. We love to see your face, but we also understand that sometimes that doesn't work for you. So today's focus is on the A+ essential of climate. And just a brief reminder that climate and A+ schools are enhanced through building collaborative skills that create an environment of respect and support, developing a creative community that's fun and engaging for teachers and students, focusing on lifelong learning for the entire school community, and working towards a common vision and some shared decision making, and of course, sharing and celebrating the key components of climate. But today we're kind of focusing our climate work in on social and emotional learning. That's a big hot topic right now. It was going to be anyway, but with the pandemic, it's even more relevant and important for not only for our students, but for ourselves. And so in the handout that you're getting, and I'm sure Tom will put these in the chat box too, the links, we might reference the CASEL competencies. CASEL is the collaboration for academic, social, and emotional learning. And North Carolina is a collaborating state with CASEL. So our North Carolina Department of Public Instruction is working right now on supporting the work of CASEL through our teaching and learning. And there is an implementation plan available through our State Department of Public Instruction that talks about that CASEL implementation. And part of that implementation is strengthening adult social emotional competencies and capacities. So really that's where we're focusing today, but we also know that by strengthening yours, some of these activities will also be relevant for your students. So you might be able to take these and adapt them for your classrooms as well. So in particular today, we're going to be working on just strengthening your social and emotional learning a little bit. So we want you to sort of personally experience some of these, but as you're thinking through them, think about how they might adapt for your classroom as well. Tom, Nate, Joseph, want to add anything before I jump into our opening Energizer? No, I get that all the men are saying no today. All right, so we are going to focus a little bit on self-awareness in our opening Energizer. And that's sort of the ability to recognize your own emotions and thoughts and values and how they influence our behavior. It's also the ability to assess our strengths and our limitations. And it also connects to sort of our sense of confidence, our optimism, and that big educational buzzword, growth mindset. Anybody ever heard of that? Yep, growth mindset. So it includes identifying emotions, self-perception, recognizing your strengths, self-confidence, and self-efficacy. That's sort of where self-awareness falls. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a game called Beyond Basics Live Emojis. And what you are going to do is you are going to select a beyond the basic emotion. So the basic emotions might be happy, sad, tired. And I'm going to encourage you to think a little bit beyond that basic language and think of an emotion that might be like jubilant or apprehensive. To respond to the prompt, right now I am feeling blank. So we've all had a day today of some sort. So how are you feeling today? Pick a word that matches your emotion that's a little bit beyond the basics. And Tom, I do have a link there for a list of emotion vocabulary. You may have already put it in there. If you need a little help finding a good emotion vocabulary word, click that link. And there's quite a lot of words in there. So you are going to select a word, and then you are also going to create a facial emoji to go with the word. So we're going to do live emojis. So probably you know some emojis that are like, oh, the crying emoji or the I'm happy emoji. So you can use your hands and your face, and you're going to come a little bit closer, like Crystal is right now. I know she's reading the list, but kind of close so we can see what emoji goes with your beyond the basic emotion word. Okay, so you're doing two things. You're picking an emotion word and you're creating a facial and hand, if you want, emoji to go with it, a live one. All right, and there's one more little piece. This might be fun for your kiddos if you want to play this in the classroom. I created a little Beyond Basics emoji bingo card for you. So if you want to click that link to the bingo card, it will create a card for you. And I made it just a little small one. So there's 9 emoji symbols. And as we share out some of our emotions, if you think you see somebody's live emoji that matches one of the emojis on the bingo card, you can click it and see if anybody can get bingo. Okay, so boy, it's a 3-part thing. You got your emotion word, you got your live emoji, and if you want to play along and play bingo, you can do that. All right, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think about that live emoji. And if you want to turn your back to your camera or turn your camera off for a second to practice, you are welcome to do that. Okay, emotion word, beyond the basic, and your live emoji. And then I'm going to be asking for volunteers. We probably won't get to everybody sharing today. I might have everybody share their emoji all at once after we share a few out. But remember, part of self-awareness is identifying emotion. So for our kids and for us, I think we have to go beyond the basic. All right, who's got one? Turn your cameras back on so we can see your emojis. All right, Sharon, I see you. Go ahead and unmute and tell us your word and then share your emoji. Nice and close up for us.
Excited, delighted, excited.
Excited, delighted. Maybe it's excited.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, is anybody bingoing with us? You can look and see if you see an emoji on the bingo card that looks like excited. And if so, you can put an X on it. Excited, delighted. Thanks for being our first guinea pig, Sharon. All right, who else wants to share? Oh, thanks, Joseph. I think you were just raising your hand.
I would say I'm feeling zippy. I had a couple of cups of coffee this morning. I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm excited to learn. So,
What does zippy look like in a live emoji?
I think it looks like big smile.
All right, see if you've got that one on your bingo card. Thanks, Joseph. All right, who else has one to share? Melissa, did I see you raising your hand? Awesome, thank you.
Okay, I'm feeling attentive.
Nice. Did anybody have an emoji on their bingo card that might be attentive? Those of you that don't have your videos turned on, I can still hear your word if you want to raise your little hand or unmute and let us know your word. Let's do one more. Anybody got share one more? Crystal, are you raising your hand? Thanks.
Okay, so I thought this would clear, but here's how it started this morning. Blah. It hasn't cleared up yet. I need more coffee.
Oh no, was your word blah?
Blah.
Blah, nice. Is there a blah on the bingo card? All right, we only shared 4 of those, but let's all now, you don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to, but let's all just share our live emojis and then we'll move on to the next thing. So come up close share your live emoji. You have to look around too while you're sharing. Nice. Amanda, nice. I definitely saw some people's faces on that emoji bingo card just now, for sure. All right, thanks for playing Beyond Basic Emoji Bingo with me, and I am now passing it over to Tom.
Thank you, Michelle. So that was an example of an activity that you can use to check in with yourself, that your students can use to check in with you and with each other. It's light and it's fun, but it's helping them to identify emotions and to use better vocabulary when describing those emotions, which is the first of the SEL competencies, self-awareness. We're going to talk about self-management now, and I'm going to put the SEL definition and clarifying bullets underneath that in the chat as well. So self-management is about regulation, discipline, also a little bit about goal setting and organization skills. One way that we can manage ourselves and our stress, develop self-discipline, is to use grounding techniques. Grounding techniques are used to help someone if they're feeling overwhelmed in any way by focusing on the senses and help creating a sense of focus and calm. So I'm going to put some grounding techniques into the chat as well. And we are going to take just a moment to each of us pick one and try it. So we've got some different options. You could name 5 things around your room to yourself. You could listen to energetic or relaxing music for a minute. I'm actually going to play some music to use as our timer. You can hold an object in your hands and focus on the color or on the texture. Take 10 deep breaths, counting each one as your chest rises. I also like to make sure my belly expands, not just my top chest, but my bottom belly. That means I'm breathing deep. And if you got a snack nearby and you want to have some, you're more than welcome to do that anytime, but especially now, eat a piece of candy or other food and choose 3 words that describe its taste. And Nate, you were telling me about a grounding technique that you use sometimes that's about the sense of touch as well.
Yeah, so I like to have my students occasionally put all of their pads of their fingertips together. And then if you get to a quiet place and you still everything, you can feel your pulse through your fingertips. And if you feel that pulse, then you basically have kind of released everything else and you're truly kind of focused in that moment.
So go ahead and select a grounding technique, and I'm going to share about a minute's worth of music, some flute from one of our other A+ fellows named Gideon, and then we'll talk about it. Thank you for taking that moment for a grounding technique. Before we talk about that, I also wanted to just reintroduce something that's as good for adults as it is for our young ones, which is one of my favorites, Mr. Rogers, and a song that he sang about his feelings and about self-control. So I'm going to share that with you now as well. Let's see if we can get the volume up on that.
Not hearing that, Tom.
To be able to.
All right, let's try that one more time.
What do you do when you're angry? What do you do with the mad that you feel? When you feel so mad, you feel like biting. When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. What do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag? Or see how fast you go? It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish, can stop, stop, stop anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this and know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. For a girl can be someday a lady, and a boy can be someday a man. And you know that's true, don't you?
An oldie but a goodie. So take just a moment to revisit the definition and skills that are listed there under the self-management definition in the chat. And think about the small investment of time and effort you took to explore a grounding technique and the lyrics to the song by Mr. Rogers. Comment in the chat, what's the most noticeable for you about this self-management activity? Or maybe even what's most important for you? So one thing to remember is that you don't rehearse in front of an audience, and you don't rehearse on the night of the show. You rehearse, I'm a theater person, so these come up easy for me. You rehearse before the show and rehearse privately. So these are things for you to practice when you're feeling in control, and for students to learn when they're feeling safe and secure, so that they have them to go to and they have them practiced for when things aren't as in control and aren't as secure. Thanks so much. Our next activity will come to us from Nate, and he'll be talking to us about social awareness.
Thanks, Tom. So social awareness is basically about being able to recognize and consider other people's perspectives. It's kind of big about empathy. It's certainly about perspective taking, and I feel like we've come to a place in our country currently where it also social awareness is about appreciating diversity, which I think is very important right now. So I want to talk about compassion. And what I would like for you to do just for a moment in the chat is write down your best definition of compassion. So what do you think? How would you define compassion? And I'm just going to read out a few that I see. I might miss some, but I see empathetic, kindness, having empathy, caring about others, connecting, opening your heart to others. Very good. I'm going to introduce you to, and I'm just going to type her name in here. She is a TED Fellow, which many of you may be familiar with. TED Fellow means like she's given a TED Talk, but she was like vaunted above the other TED speakers in that like they decided that she should be awarded a TED Wish is what they call it. And so that basically means that TED's going to get behind your idea or your initiative. And her TED Wish is about compassion. She's created a charter for compassion, and her name is Karen Armstrong. I put it in the chat. I encourage you to check out her TED Talk because it's wonderful. She has a really great book called The 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, which I have done several years ago, but I did that with my school. We did a book group surrounding the 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life. I highly recommend it.
There will be links to her TED Talk and her book on the handout that you'll get.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to share screen for a moment because I want to show you what, so she's created what she calls a charter for compassion, and it is a worldwide movement, and basically people elect to join this charter. And so I just want to share with you as a part of her charter, these are her expectations for compassion in a school. And so what I would like for you to do as you kind of look at this is just kind of respond to it. And again, you can respond in the chat. So and I'll read it to you. In a compassion school, students should learn how to listen to each other. Service learning should be a part of the curriculum. Students and teachers actively prevent bullying. Students are taught to be global citizens and to treat others with respect and dignity. So I'm going to encourage you to just read over that one more time. And what I would like for you to do is just kind of respond. Is there something that stands out about that to you? Is there something that you connect with? Or maybe you're thinking like, that's a focus that I want for my school. That's something that I think should be a part of cultivating a climate at my school. And just kind of, like I said, respond in the chat if anything stands out there. Also, I would say if you would like to unmute, if you would like to maybe just call out something that stands out to you, I think that's.
I like how students learn how to listen to each other. I liked it just because sometimes I think students listen to what they want to hear. And I think sometimes students need to, learn how to listen to what was said and what they took from it and differentiate what they heard from how it made them feel, if that makes sense. To analyze what they're hearing versus what that made them feel at that moment, so.
Excellent, thank you. I'm seeing in the chat some similar thoughts. I'm seeing the response to bullying, which I like that it says actively prevent bullying, which I think is important. I see a connection to the service learning piece, which again, I also think if you're serving somebody, that requires empathy, and that requires those expectations that come from self-awareness. Very good. So thank you for sharing. I want to share with you now what I call, Michelle asked me before our meeting today if this was a real initiative or if this was just something that I've kind of come up with. I call it the Be Kind Initiative. And so for the past several years at my school, I have invited students to make pins that say be kind. And these are some examples. Some of these are pins that I've made, but the majority of these are pins that my students have made. And so I'll show you really quickly kind of the basics of it. So on the back, I buy, and I have, I think we'll make a link for this too, like on Amazon, you can buy pin backs. I get this package generally. It's 120 pins, pin backs. And then Amazon they also make now these magnetic pin backs, which are excellent for this purpose. But I use those. And so this is an example of the back, and I just use glue. It's Elmer's. Elmer's has a school glue, and they have a slightly better glue, which that's what I would recommend, but that's all I use. And I also use these magnetic pin backs. But the way that it works for us in our school, and I've kind of put it through the whole school, is you wear the pin, and I'm wearing one today. If you see somebody being kind, you give them your pin. And you tell them that same thing, that if they see kindness, they should pass the pin on. And what I do generally is I make so many pins that if a student says like, I gave my pin away, like I'm happy to give them more. So I just kind of keep doling out the pins. What I would like you to do, so I'm gonna exit my share. And I would say too, like if you would like more information about like how to make a pin, like I'm happy to do that, especially like as an art teacher, like I can make a video real quick and send you, happy to do that. But what I would like for you to do is to kind of think outside the box. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a pin. I just happen to have right here a Dixon Ticonderoga pencil, and I happen to have a permanent marker. So I can write "Be kind" on this pencil, and now I've got a Be Kind pencil. And I could use that potentially in my classroom in the same way that I use the pins. So what I would like for you to do, and I'm going to give you 1 minute to do this, in the space where you currently are, and if you need to go to a different space, that's okay. I want you to find something that you can write "Be kind" on that you could use possibly for this initiative. Think outside the box. What do you got? And I'm going to set a timer right now, and I'm going to give you 1 minute to find something that maybe you could possibly use for this this Be Kind initiative. Your timer is beginning now. 1 minute. Go, go, go. What do you have around you that you could turn into something? I see in here, like I've got a toilet paper tube. There we go. That's my Be Kind tube. What do you got? What do you got? Oh, I see some people already holding some things up. Great. Perfect. A rock, I think, is wonderful. And you can totally take a rock and draw Be Kind on it. I see a clothespin. That's awesome. And you can wear the clothespin. That's excellent. Looks like maybe a bookmark or a bumper sticker. Is that a hand sanitizer? Oh, yep. Very cool. Colored index cards. I'm seeing some people in the chat. Yep. I think what's really cool, like you can put a piece of tape on the back of a paper that you could stick to a child's chest. Like it can be the complicated thing, but it can also be very simple. Yep. Oh, I see the little sticky note on the end of the pen. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So that's kind of my Be Kind initiative. And like I say, oh, I see. Yeah, I'm seeing awesome. A Be Kind hacky sack, a Be Kind keychain. It looks like. All right. If, like I said, if you are interested in making pins, let me know. Because I'm happy to share what I know about making pins. At one point, I even made a stamp so that I could kind of easily mass produce some. But I've found that like just a handwritten pin is very, very simple and very easy to accomplish. All right, so we're gonna move on now. Now we're gonna talk about relationship skills. So another SEL focus is relationship skills. And this relates to communication, social engagement, relationship building, and teamwork. And I want to talk in this kind of time, I want to talk about staff. So what we have found is, and I think you guys, those of you that have been in A+ school probably are aware that like so much of it begins with the staff before it can kind of trickle down. So creating a climate it really begins with staff. And so I want to talk about this term that I've really kind of latched onto this year, and it's a culture of vulnerability. So the term is a culture of vulnerability. And we are working at my school, myself and some colleagues, we have been really actively working to kind of create a culture of vulnerability. And just trying to think about what that is. And so for just a moment, before we kind of dig into it, I'd like for you to respond kind of in the chat, your definition for the word vulnerability. So what does vulnerability mean to you? And again, I'm just going to call out some that I see: openly brave, open to self and others, safe to express, willing to be open, feeling supported, taking risks, absolutely, being exposed, very good, needing others, willingness to be open to others. Excellent. One word that stood out to me in that was being brave. And in a moment, we're going to watch a video. I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown. She's wonderful. If you're not, she's got a really great show on Netflix, or a documentary on Netflix. She's done a wonderful TED Talk. Brene Brown is, excellent. And she really makes a great connection between vulnerability and bravery, and kind of the pointing out that, like, most people don't associate those things together, but they absolutely are. They go hand in hand. Being vulnerable is an act of bravery. Before we get to Brene Brown, I want to tell you about another, this is another really important person. And this is kind of, for me, this was a gateway to Brene Brown. And I'm going to type her name in the chat, but her name is Laurel Braitman. And she is, and again, like Tom said, we're going to have links to Laurel Braitman and the work that she's done. But Laurel Braitman works at Stanford. She's a writer. That's her job mainly, but she's a professor also at Stanford. And what she's begun to do is she's created a class called Writing as Medicine. And what she recognized was, through writing, she could help doctors kind of open themselves up, which I think some of you may have experienced before, the doctor that maybe needs to kind of have a little bit of a more emotional connection. And so she's offered a class. During the pandemic, she's offered a class for everybody. It's a writing workshop. And basically, she's calling the writing workshop Writing as Medicine, but it's really about processing the pandemic. And so I reached out to her and I said, because the class is technically for healthcare workers and families of healthcare workers, but I reached out to her and I said, I feel like I'm a healthcare worker for young people, like for the minds of young people. And I said, I'd like to participate in this class that you have. And she was like, open arms. She was like, come on. And so it's just this beautiful moment and this beautiful time where basically people, we write. So we participate in her workshop, and she gives us a prompt, and we write, and then people respond and they read what they have written. And it is, in some cases, it'll make you cry. In some cases, you're laughing out loud, but it's basically a moment where people from all over the world come together and are vulnerable with each other. And what I realized was she's created a space where people feel comfortable kind of exposing themselves and being vulnerable. And so there's power there. And our intention, one of our intentions, I'm working to do it with our staff at our school, is to kind of do that same thing. So that's kind of, I just want to plant that seed in your head before because I'd like you to do some writing in a moment, and it's going to be very short, but I would like for you to consider maybe being vulnerable in this space. Before we do that, I want to show you a Brene Brown clip, because I think it also totally relates. Thank you, Tom.
So very quickly, really about 6 weeks into this research, I ran into this unnamed thing that absolutely unraveled connection in a way that I didn't understand or had never seen. And so I pulled back out of the research and thought, I need to figure out what this is. And it turned out to be shame. And shame is really easily understood as the fear of disconnection. Is there something about me that if other people know it or see it, that I won't be worthy of connection? which we all know that feeling. I'm not blank enough. I'm not thin enough, rich enough, beautiful enough, smart enough, promoted enough. The thing that underpinned this was excruciating vulnerability. This idea of, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen, really seen. And you know how I feel about vulnerability. I hate vulnerability. And so I thought, this is my chance to beat it back with my measuring stick. I'm going in, I'm gonna figure this stuff out, I'm gonna spend a year, I'm gonna totally deconstruct shame, I'm gonna understand how vulnerability works, and I'm gonna outsmart it. So I was ready, and I was really excited. As you know, it's not gonna turn out well. You know this. So I could tell you a lot about shame, but I'd have to borrow everyone else's time. But here's what I can tell you that it boils down to. And this may be one of the most important things that I've ever learned in the decade of doing this research. And what it was is that if I roughly took the people I interviewed and divided them into people who really have a sense of worthiness, that's what this comes down to, a sense of worthiness. They have a strong sense of love and belonging. And folks who struggle for it, and folks who are always wondering if they're good enough. There was only one variable that separated the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and the people who really struggle for it, and that was the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging believe they're worthy of love and belonging. That's it. They believe they're worthy. And to me, the hard part of the one thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear that we're not worthy of connection, was something that personally and professionally I felt like I needed to understand better. So what I did is I took all of the interviews where I saw worthiness, where I saw people living that way, and just looked at those. What do these people have in common? And so here's what I found. What they had in common was a sense of courage. And I want to separate courage and bravery for you for a minute. Courage, the original definition of courage, when it first came into the English language, it's from the Latin word cur, meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And so these folks had, very simply, the courage to be imperfect. They had the compassion to be kind to themselves first and then to others, because as it turns out, we can't practice compassion with other people if we can't treat ourselves kindly. And the last was they had connection, and this was the hard part, as a result of authenticity. They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they were, which is, you have to absolutely do that for connection. The other thing that they had in common was this. They fully embraced vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. They didn't talk about vulnerability being comfortable, nor did they really talk about it being excruciating, as I had heard earlier in the shame interviewing. They just talked about it being necessary. They talked about the willingness to say, I love you first. The willingness to do something where there are no guarantees. The willingness to breathe through waiting for the doctor to call after your mammogram. The willing to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. They thought this was fundamental.
So there's kind of a lot to digest there. I hope that you were able to kind of see and connect to what she's getting at about being vulnerable and the importance of being vulnerable. I think about this for myself as a teacher, and I think about some of the best experiences that I've had as a teacher have come when I've kind of exposed myself a little bit, exposed flaws, exposed my own personal issues. I feel like those are when I've made some of my deepest connections with my students. So just want to kind of put that back there, back in your reference. Just that notion of like, and I want you to think for just a moment about like, are there places, whether it's maybe with a colleague or with some other staff where maybe you could open yourself up to being more vulnerable? And what would the result be from that? What would you gain from that, from being open in that way? And then the other thing, and I think this is really important, and like I say, at my school, we've really kind of made this a focus, especially with our middle school, of modeling. So one of the things that we've really worked hard to do is to try to set up situations where we can model vulnerability, where we can model ourselves being open. And we've created a series of videos that are like morning meeting videos. And in our videos, we have some questions that we ask. But one of the questions is, what's a fear that you have right now in this time that we're living in? Which, if sharing that is an act of vulnerability, I think. And I think also it's just so important. Like, we're living in a crazy time right now, and our kids, our coworkers, they all need to recognize like we're not all that duck where everything's calm above the water, but our feet are just kicking below. Everybody's kind of got some heavy things in their lives, so I think that's very important. I'm going to ask you to do a writing piece. We're going to keep it very simple. I think writing is a great venue for opening up vulnerability because you don't have to share writing. But if people are inclined to share, there can be really powerful moments there. Sometimes writing for us, I can write something and just take away something that is only for me, and it's been wonderful and cathartic. So I think it's important to kind of have that in your mind. So I'm going to give you a prompt. This actually comes from Laurel Braitman. It was when the wildfires were going on in California, and she said, "I want you to picture," because she had to do that because she lives in California. What's in your go bag? So if you're in an emergency situation, you have to have a go bag. And what is in your go bag? And what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to write 3 sentences, or it can just be one. What's in your go bag right now? And I want you to think of it in 2 ways. So it can be a physical, like my actual go bag. If I had an emergency, this is going in there right away. Or it can be metaphorical. So like, what do I need in my metaphorical go bag that's gonna help me if I'm in a crazy emergency? And if you're so inclined, you don't have to, but if you're inclined, I welcome you to share your writing in the chat. And I'll give you a minute just now. The minute goes by very quickly. I want to reiterate that Laurel Braitman, and we were going to have a link to her website, she has welcomed educators to be a part of her writing workshop. They take place every other week. In fact, this weekend will be a new one on Saturdays at 1 o'clock. And for me, I've done 3 of them, and they are really wonderful. Like, if you need a release, if you need to just go to a place where you might feel better about the world for a minute, I strongly encourage you to look into that. But thank you. I think it's back to you, Tom. Is that right?
It is. Thank you, Nate. If you want to, you can continue to add your writing to the chat as we move on to our next and final CASEL competency, which is responsible decision making. And one of the things that Michelle mentioned when we started that we are trying to do for our fellows and for our teachers is to just have small experiences like this that are thoughtful, that allow you to make some personal meaning for social and emotional learning, so that when you engage with your students, it's not just that we are giving you activities to do with your students. It's also so that you have developed those skills and thought about those skills some before you take those into the classroom as well. You know, doing a little taste testing before we serve our important customers. So this last exercise is called Leader or Boss, and it was adapted from a lesson plan that I found online that I will give the link to in the handout. But it's one that you may have seen some variation of previously. And this has a lot to do with responsibility and ethics. So we're going to start out by just taking a moment to take a look at this visual. On the top, you see the term boss pointing to a figure seated at a desk on a rolling platform that's being pulled by 3 other figures. And on the bottom, you see the same figures, but the arrangement is different because the leader is out in front of the 3 other figures, encouraging and pointing the way. So this would be a great example of using some visual literacy strategies with students to help to digest and dissect a visual piece of information in order to set up a topic. What do you notice about this piece? Feel free to unmute or to type into the chat box.
Well, like you said, in the one at the top, the boss is basically, he's not doing any work. He's just telling everybody what to do. And the one at the bottom, he's in the trenches with them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The boss is making the job harder for the team. He's adding the weight to the thing that they have to move. That thing, what is that label for the thing that they're moving?
The mission statement.
The mission. So that's got to get moved one way or the other, right? In the chat, I see power over versus power with and equal footing. In both pictures, the people come before the mission. And in the bottom picture, the leader is sharing the load. So taking a look at what you know, what you notice, and then thinking, well, what do you wonder? What do you wonder about what you see right now? What are some questions that you might want to ask either the figures in the art or maybe the artist that came up with this? What are some questions? I wonder if that artist has experienced some leader behavior and some boss behavior. I wonder if some boss behavior was what inspired the piece. The question in the chat is, what is the mission? So we've opened up the topic of leader versus boss. And what I'm putting in the chat box now is a series of thoughts, vocabulary words. You can also take a look at some leadership quotes. There's one that we will close with. But introducing this topic and thinking, okay, well, what are the qualities of a boss and what are the qualities of a leader? And I'm going to see, this is my first time doing this one, if I can use a whiteboard. I probably could use a whiteboard if I could see it on my screen. I have too many windows open. Let me close some. Well, let's just do this verbally then, because my whiteboard is nowhere to be found on my screen. Oh, there it is. It was hiding behind the second window from the right. Okay, so we're going to have leader and we're going to have boss. All right, from the vocabulary that you see in the chat box, what is some leader behavior? I see knowledge,
Coach,
coach, confident, take responsibility. All right, let's switch. There's plenty more, but let's switch over to boss behavior. What are some words that we see there? Dictates, tells, supervises. One more. Micromanager. So in this lesson plan, students can have conversations about what the difference between some of these things are. Sometimes there are pairs or analogs, and I'll show you. You can also create a, let's see. You can also create an anchor chart that you can use for your students. But this is also a conversation to have with your coworkers, with your department chairs, with your school leadership, because I don't know about you, but right now, I think when we're at our worst, our boss behavior comes out. And when we're at our best, our leadership behavior comes out. And it really should be the other way around, but that's just kind of how our instincts work. You know, that boss brain kicks in because we've got a mission and we've got to accomplish it. And sometimes what we need is helpers rather than bosses. And I saw that in the chat as well. Couldn't the leader also be anywhere else in that line, including in the back of that line? So I wanted to thank you for taking a look at that today, because you are leaders and you are the folks that make the difference for our students. And we really appreciate you taking a look at how social and emotional learning helps to build climate. Hopefully, some of these activities have helped you to make that connection. And as a few people have pointed out in the chat, the arts do this in a really great way, in a really, really great way. Before we leave, I do want to invite anyone who has not had a chance to add their name, school, and grade to the chat box to go ahead and do so for our attendance purposes. I also would like to remind you that this A+ talk, as well as its accompanying handout, and we'll get Nate to maybe put us another handout together that's just about sourcing and pins. That would be really great. Will be on the A+ Live Binder by the end of the week. There are also all of our other materials from our A+ talks that we've been having. And so you can check that out in our online learning tab, as well as the information for registering for A+ University, which is our online home for supplemental A+ PD. You can get to it through the Live Binder, but there's also a separate registration page for that I'm going to share now. And finally, I want to invite you to come back on November the 12th. We will be having another A+ talk. This time it'll be about the A+ essential of multiple learning pathways. And then in December, we will be having an A+ talk addressing collaboration. So you're welcome to come back for any of those as well. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the A+ team for being here. Thank you to Nate and Michelle for sharing those activities with us. We hope that you all